The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Welcome into the Coach Bill Clark Show. Landrum Roberts along with Coach Bill Clark. Pat Smith is not here with us this week, Coach, but we will try to muster our way through it.
I think we can do it.
You think so?
I think so, yeah.
You're looking good.
Pat's playing hooky.
He's playing hooky, kind of.
Yeah, other than that.
Yeah, well, I like to bust his chops every now and then, but he's actually got a valid excuse for not being here.
Yeah, all right, we'll give him this one.
But for the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about something that's very important, and it is the Coach Bill Clark Show and your involvement and your new role and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis with Coach Safely, and that's an organization that is absolutely synonymous, and because of awareness and outreach that has been done over the years, not only from people like yourselves, but also Coach Jack Crow, and spreading that awareness. We're here to talk about coaching today.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. You know, we've talked about this before, but that's what I knew that's what I wanted to do from the time I can remember. You know, now my dad was a coach, and I've said this so many times, but it was so much more than the wins and losses. It was the kids coming to the house. It was the camaraderie with the staff. It was that the game meant more than just the win. Now, of course, winning is fun, and we want to do it, but it was all the other stuff and playing all the sports that you could play. You know, all the things that I think we're trying to get across in Coach Safely. It starts, obviously, with safety. You know, and for a guy that got injured lifting weights, you know, there's that safety component. It's like that's the given. That's where we want to start this thing. So as we talk about Coach Safely through the show, but also I want to talk about coaching.
And we have times even, and we're a little bit of an age gap, Coach, but we remember and talking about the good old days, and I can remember this, and no, it was 2 Advils and ice and all of that good stuff, and that's fun and that's wonderful. But now with the research, with the technology, with the knowledge that we have, not only as physicians and medical professionals, but as just human beings and what we have access to at our fingertips. Why don't we use some of that stuff? And not only at the professional level, at the college level, at the high school level, but even at the most elementary of levels when we're teaching and coaching our young people.
Well, you know, when I say I explained this to administrators in the past, where I say if I say the word coach about you, that's the biggest compliment I could give you, just like if I said the word pastor.
Right.
But there is this inherent, you know, pastor is biblical. And you call yourself pastor, you know, you're taking on a mantle, right?
That's right.
You know,
there is an expectation.
There is, and you know, the Lord has an expectation for you. Well, coaching is how I feel. That's a sacred duty. That's a sacred oath you're taking. So when you go become a professional coach, that's one thing, right? That's, you know, you go to school or whatever you do to go. But I would always explain to my coaches, let's not forget what got you into this. Somebody inspired you. They made you want to believe in yourself, to do more than you thought you could do. All those great things. That's what we think of when we think of coaches. Why do you love to talk about sports?
Yeah.
You know, well, now we're going to the youth level, and this is dads and moms who said, I'm going to take part of my day. I mean, not always, but more than likely they've got a child on the team, right?
Right.
And they're willing to give of their time to help. Now, we hear bad things, and you know, there's a lot of things we can talk about that we can do better. What we want to do from Coach Safely was give you the tools as a layman to be safe first. But there's also other components from that. There's the mental health side, what to look for. These are things that in my world you were hearing, you were taught. There was constant education. And now we're going to the youth world where there can be injuries. There can be overuse injuries. So let's keep them safe first. And so here's the tagline, Coach Safely so they will play. You know, if it's safe, we want you out there. We expect to be out there. You're not scared to put your child out there. And we're talking about contact sports, non-contact sports. So let's make it safe first so they will play along with this precious mantle of being called coach.
Yeah, and it's fair. You do have those helicopter parents where maybe a lot of times that they haven't familiarized themselves with youth sports or team sports where they want to maybe be overprotective of their child. And maybe that activity is not for your child. But we've also seen, on the other hand, I've seen it, whether it was umpiring or helping out or even playing at a younger age, competitive sports, where there's the overzealous coach that wants everybody to think that he's Vince Lombardi.
Yep.
I can only imagine you as a grandfather, as a parent as well. And now at this stage in your life, you get to witness youth sports, and you get to, as just a passerby, and that coach does not know that you're watching. It's got to take you back sometimes, Coach, just watching and witnessing what
100%.
Some of these coaches that probably mean well,
Yeah.
but they weren't never educated. And
Yeah.
now they're in charge of a group of young people, and those young people are taking what they're saying, not to go back to the pastor reference, as gospel.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, one, let's look at the age. You know, God bless these folks for taking 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. We're so appreciative, right? And that's where we're going to start. When we start talking about messaging for Coach Safely in this new year and where we're headed, we're going to start with thank you. You know, that we're appreciative of you. You know, we need you. You know, and I think that's what people are so worried about. Well, you're going to run off the coaches we have. I said, no, I disagree. If we make it about education, where as a coach, I'm going out there and that's not my world to say, okay, I've got tools now. And there's going to be more to it, but if I started with safety, and I can feel good about what does heat illness look like? What about weather? You know, when should we be getting off the field? You know, how close does lightning need to be for us to get off the field? You know, it's within 10 miles and whatever. All these other things that go into my world, you know, as a professional coach, that's what we're going to try to give to these youth coaches. And then also talk about, and I want to have a competitive spirit. You know, go watch my 2 grandsons play with my daughter, who is a granddaughter of a coach, daughter of a coach. I mean, you don't get any more competitive than she is, and a lot. But also, there's a right way to do it, and you know, and that's so. There's this competitive piece we don't want to lose that we like, and there's toughness that is being created, but the right way. So I think hopefully that's the things we can give and help to encourage these coaches who are very appreciative of safe and the right way to do it.
So my son, and let's just pretend my son, John, he's turning 8 years old.
Yeah.
And he's playing a particular sport, and I want to coach my son.
Yeah.
I want to be a part of that, but I've never coached.
Yeah.
And I just go to my local sporting goods store and I grab my whistle and I got all the essentials and I look the part. But your curriculum, your course, what you're educating these guys to do, where are we starting?
Yeah, so we'll go to the Coach Safely course. If you're in the state of Alabama, you can Google it, and we're in the process of working on an app. We're going to get an app, but we're going to make it easy. But you can Google Coach Safely. You put in the state of Alabama, and you put in your local association you're with. It is free to the state of Alabama right now. It is free. So go in there, and it is 11 modules, and we have purposefully made this course try not to last longer than an hour. I mean, an hour of your time to be trained. And I had taken it a while back. You know, we've been doing this for 10 years. We got the law passed in 18. Of course, I had a day job at coaching UAB, and so I went back and took the course again just the other day. I put, the family group text, everybody needs to take this.
Yeah.
Coaching or not. Now, my son-in-law had taken it for coaching my grandsons. He'd already taken it, and Trustful's great about all their coaches take it. So you can go take it. It's free of charge, and it's the law, So go take this class, but there's 11 modules in there. For example, there's 2 on concussions. What do you look for? How can we spot these things? But 11, there's mental health in there. There's a lot of just great things to do, and there'll be 5 questions at the end that are yes, no questions. That you can answer, and it gives you a chance if you miss them to go back and see. The text is spoken out, so it's written, but it's also spoken. But it's worth your time, and it just makes you more knowledgeable. So it's a no-brainer.
There's so many questions that a new coach or someone who had never been exposed to this type of program and education would have. What are some of your more frequently asked questions that come to Coach Safely? Yeah,
so I think first folks talk, when we talk about safety, I get a lot about tackle football.
Yeah.
When's a good time to start? What about flag football? And I think there's a comfort zone there, and I'll just use that for an example as a football coach who believes in football. If you want to wait till junior high, that's what's great about flag football. I would discourage. I like for them to start a little bit earlier because junior high is really competitive and you got a chance to really be behind. Because here's what happens. This, when you're behind, you get a bad experience.
Right.
If you get a bad experience, a lot of times those are the kids that quit.
Yep.
Now we're looking for coaches that are Coach Safely trained, that know what they're doing flag football is a great start. Somewhere in there after that, prior to junior high, whatever your comfort level is, and you got good coaching, I think you can start. I like, third, fourth, fifth grade, as kind of the time for me because I love the flag football start, But a lot of the questions are really about safety, I think, and I think that's what we're giving you. There it is for you. All you got to do is take the class. Now, there's a lot of stuff out there that you can Google, but what we're trying to do for us, one of the things we're about to add is all these strength coaches I know and all these folks, we're going to start putting in some things about dynamic warm-up. So if we were talking about ways to get faster.
Yeah.
You've heard of A skips and B, really run mechanics. What does that look like to have proper running form, but also is a great way to warm up. Male, female, doesn't matter. So there's speed, which has got a competitive piece to it. There's a proper warm up. And then I have all these strength coaches out there who you would know their program saying, here's 90 seconds to start. Here's another 90 seconds. So I'm in the process of working on that and adding that to the course, just as things we give you to create best practices. As I say, best practice plus best practice.
So you're telling me if I had this available back in 1995, I would have run a faster 40 time?
100%.
Golly.
So my background.
So many regrets.
Well, I tell that story. So when I get hurt, so I get to start coaching early. I quit playing over that, in college, so I'm going to go coach early. And I discovered the top speed guy out there in the country is a guy named Lauren Seagrave, and he's LSU's women's track coach. So I go hear this guy, and I'm start hearing about A skips and B skips and what does that even look like? If you weren't a sprinter, if you weren't coming from a really good track program, you probably never heard of that. I didn't hear those things. Now, my dad in 1971 was one of the first free weight guys in the state. He goes to Georgia and hears them. So I have access to a lot of things that others don't maybe, but I had never heard these things. And so this was the precursor to us teaching people how to run. And so there's a mechanic, just like there is for everything, on running. There's mechanics that go to running, and they go and form a great warm-up as well. And that's what we call dynamic warm-up. The old static stretching that they used to make us do. And, I can go back to my junior high coach, leg raises and
grab your toes and raise
just,
up. Yeah.
I still remember I had a coach, I was in the 7th grade, and I'm playing up, and it's like we spent 30 minutes in warm-up, and you were miserable.
Yeah.
Pre
and post.
Let's see how long we can hold our feet 6 inches off the ground.
Yeah.
How much better did that make you as a player? It's just we're so far past most of that, but we want to be the answer from a safety standpoint. And then I think as we add technique things, because here's what I love about it. I love when we can be safe, fun, and competitive. So we can make it safe, and then we get you to make you a better player. So you're a safe and a better player. So why would you not want to do those things? And I love the no-brainer world.
What's the A and the B skip briefly?
So it's just two different forms of what we call a running form, okay? So an A skip would be knee up. So what happens when we bring our knee up to our chest, we want our big toe pointed up. Okay, as we strike the ground, and we want to strike that big toe with the toe up. And that's what we call the right running mechanic. And then a B skip involves the heel coming up to the butt. So when I look at that, that's a heel up and an elongation of that foot coming down and striking the ground. We could talk about this a lot, but there is a form to running, And so what we used to talk about at UAB, because that's my background, of course, Lyle Henley is there, and we all know Lyle, what a great job he does.
Yeah.
So I love that part. And a lot of coaches don't really probably understand that part, but we were always talking about in all our places about training athletes. And so when I start talking about going from sport to sport to sport, we had everybody, when I get to private, like everybody's going to train. Cheerleaders, football players, basketball players. So now we're training athletes. And when you're training athletes, the first component is safety. The first component. So as a guy that got hurt, trying to impress, when my dad gets out of coaching, I got a new coach, and I'm in the 9th grade going to 10th grade, and I'm trying to squat 360 pounds for 2 reps because I did a 400-pound squat, which was probably with bad form. And I get hurt. So I've been so big on, first thing we got to do is no harm.
Yeah.
Right? The first thing we got to do is no harm. So we want you to lift in a safe manner. We want you to train in a way that makes you better, that doesn't injure you. Right? Now, we know there's things that go with, Molly and I were talking about off camera about her gymnastics. I mean, there are things that just go with a sport from use. What we don't want to do is have a 10-year-old throwing a baseball year round.
Blows my mind.
But it's happening.
Yeah.
And if there's ever been a time where there's specialization and trying to get guys to play year-round, I had a guy sitting by me, and he was being nice. He looked Wyatt, my oldest, who's really good. He's a good player. And he says, well, he's definitely going to be playing travel ball. I said, he's absolutely not. I said, in the fall, he likes football. And then he needs to play basketball if that's what he wants to play. Not that you can't, people think that's I'm talking about travel, not in the season.
Right.
It's when you get out of season or when you're doing something, a repetitive motion like throwing 12 months out of the year. That's Jimmy Andrews. I remember when he put that out in the early 2000s because there was research. Jack Crow was over at the Andrews Institute. He's out of coaching, and Jimmy Andrews put out Major League Baseball players don't throw a baseball 3 months out of the year. Now, these are grown men. Now, are we doing that? What are we doing with the kids? And there's some things going on in the fall that doesn't mean they're doing it 12 months a year. So I don't want people to think I'm just saying that's just if you play in the fall, that's terrible. My question on that one is, does the kids want to play something else, which makes them more rounded, which go talk to a Major League scout, all you baseball folks. They're going to say, first question they ask is, does he play another sport?
Yeah.
First question they ask. Now, if a kid doesn't want to play something else, that's fine. Let's not, as a parent, talk them into playing something else. And for sure, let's not do a repetitive motion that can cause injury without a break. So these are the things that we're going to provide through science, through expert coaching of, wow, help your child, be safe, and then play these games they love.
Well, and going back to it, I remember in high school, and I played multiple sports. I was never a wrestler, but I'm a defensive coordinator, and I was a defensive end, believe it or not, at the time, going into my senior year. So why don't you come out for wrestling spring training?
Yeah.
And I did, and it would help with footwork.
Yeah.
So footwork, and
Sure.
that was something that I carried into my senior year, and it really helped me a lot. And I think a lot of times with these parents, they have a very talented kid that's been offered to play travel ball, and sometimes they're getting bad advice. Whereas, well, if you want Johnny or Susie, to be there, they're going to have to be in this circuit 11 months, 12 months out of the year. And I hate to put this light on it, but it's also, whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball, that's big business for somebody.
100%.
Right? And so what kind of message are we sending to our parents, first and foremost, who have to be able to allow their kid to go and participate? Because it's a grind on everyone.
Yeah, I just think about being well-rounded.
Yeah.
So it's not knocking, a child that loves it and wants to play it, and you're following the safety protocols so they can keep playing. This is so they will play. This is so they will play. So we're not but when you have overuse injuries, when you're not taking time off, when you're not giving this child a chance to play another sport, that's when you got to, as a parent, hold the mirror up to yourself and say, I'm doing a disservice here. I would have so many kids get to me at the high school level and say, and these are baseball guys that would say, I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
I'm sick of it. I've started hating this sport. And the same thing can happen with football. It can happen with anything, overdoing it too much. Let's keep it fun at those levels. So there's a lot of psychology here that I talk to folks about. That's what I used to do as an AD. Let them play everything they can play. There will come a time when they get to a point they're probably going to pick one, maybe two sports. That's fine. Just let that come naturally to them, and let's expose them to as many things safely as we can growing up.
And you would know this from the other side of trying to recruit talent at the college level. If my kid is talented, but he likes to play different sports, we don't want to do the year-round travel stuff.
Yep.
We just want to play the sports during the calendar year of the school year. Has it been your experience that if you're that talented, you're still going to get noticed?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And
you don't fly under the radar.
No, there's really no flying under the radar.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. There's too much video, too much scouting, too many people out there. There's just not that thing. Now, coaches can do a good job of putting their best foot forward, and I think playing in a good program helps you, no doubt. But kids get seen. The question, my thing for them is like I love to follow these guys that are taking youth kids and teaching them about movement. And I was talking to Zach Woodfin, who played and coached for me. He's the strength coach for the Titans. And he's got a son, Valor. I'm trying to think, Valor's 12, something like that right now, 11, 12, 13. Movement. Just now starting to get him into weights and those type things. And then go. Go, man, go. And like I said, you would have come to Prattville, you would have said, man, these guys know how to work. You know, we worked hard. Our youth, I was involved with all the youth teams, you know, but it was your job is to, whatever you do, I don't want them run off.
Yeah.
You know, me and you're going to have a problem if I find it. Now, I'm not saying let them be disrespectful. There's things we want them taught, right? We want them taught to be yes, sir, no, sir, and yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and be on time.
Accountable to their teammates.
100%.
Yeah.
You know, not quitting. I mean, you started this, you're going to finish it. If you don't do it next year, okay. You know, all those great things.
Yeah.
So it's not that. But we want to, let's have some fun there, especially based on the age. And that's where good coaching comes in. You know, and that's why it is a skill. And the safety part is like, okay, the minimum is it needs to be safe. And then I think we can add these other pieces to it as we go.
There's so many more levels that we will delve into, Coach. But coaching safely means about being smart, right?
Yep.
And Smart Bank, that is one of our proud partners here on this program that we bring to folks every single week.
Yeah, you know, I think that's one of the things I've loved to be involved with Smart Bank is just like I said, the small town feel of knowing the folks. You know, we introduced Lee Smith on last week's show. Robert Moore is vice president there and does a great job. Just a face you're going to see. You know, these are the guys you're going to see when you go into the bank. We're going to introduce some other folks, but go check the guys out at Smart Bank.
And we're talking about coaching safely, and we've kind of just hit the surface on a lot of this, but I want to go sports specific in football, and you coaching at different levels of football and having a high level of success, and now heading up the Coach Safely organization. Mm-hmm. What are some things that you learned throughout your career that maybe you started, these were practices that you implemented in your program on a day-to-day basis during the season or in the off season, that through maturation or just learning more that you changed later in your career?
Gosh, how long do we have? I mean, but, you know, obviously the game changes, and I used to tell my coaches all the time, this history. All right, when I'd say the word history, I'd say, look, I don't want to see no rolling of the eyes because I'm wanting you to experience something that I've already gone through. So you learn from something that I have. So what I had was a father who coached, and I'm wanting to hear it. I'm loving it. You know, I told you I'm 6 years old, drawing up plays, but I loved all the stuff, you know, how you got somebody to do something and make them want to do it, and the love of, you know, I'd sit in there. He wouldn't let me be a manager until I was in the fourth grade, but maybe I got to hear him speak before the game. I'm over there, tears coming down my face. I'm like, why is everybody in here not crying? You know, I mean, you know, you better be ready to go play, you know, but it was as I say, all the good corny stuff, all the reasons that we play and play for each other and all that. I think just what gets the most out of an athlete, you know, and they're all different. You know, I think that was the one thing that I would hear from him a lot. I remember I had a high school coach named Stan Jones who was coaching me. It came with my dad, and Dad gets out of coaching, but he's still coaching me, right? So I told Dad, I said, you know, Coach Jones was great, and boy, I bet he was tough. And he said, yeah, he was a good player, and he's one of my favorite players. He said, but now when I got on him, he couldn't really handle it. Now, granted, my dad could get on you in a way that wasn't ever any cussing, but, you know, talk to guys that played for him, you know, and he's 5'7", you know, but it was – you felt like you were letting him down. So I understand there was a way he probably got on him that was tough. His point was Stanley Jones was doing everything he could every play. He was giving you all he had. So it didn't take a lot. He was very quiet, and you could break him. Yeah. You know, versus there are some players that need the extra, as we used to say, kick in the butt, but just that's what they respond to. You know, so one is finding what makes each player tick. Yeah. You know, is it a lack of focus? Is it being a little easier, a little harder? I think those are the things you learn with the players and what that looks like. You know, and for me, it's telling the truth. You know, whether we're talking about time we're practicing or consistency or how I discipline folks. And, you know, if I'm going to get on you, I'm going to get on you. We're going to all be held to the same standard. That was one of my big things at UAB. You could go seat 1, seat 10, seat 20, I hope they said, boy, Coach treated us all. He was tough on all of us.
Right.
But I was consistent. Now, I might bring a guy in the office later on that nobody saw about and love him up or get on him more or whatever it was, but there was a consistency that everybody knew how they were going to be treated. What were the expectations? And I think that's just something you learn as you go what gets the most out of your players.
Well, and that's something I'm so glad you said that is consistency, because my mom was an educator. She was a first grade teacher for 30 years, and I think some of these things they're applicable
100%,
obviously to
100%.
to teaching young people and understanding their situations are all not created equal.
That's right.
And some kids are dealing with other things, and they have inherent challenges that other kids might not have, and finding that out first and foremost. But I also think about, you know, some of the things that were instilled in me, and you said consistency. And to me now, at 46 years of age in life and living in the real world, when I look at true leadership, it's someone who is consistent.
That's right.
And knowing what I'm going to get, even if the circumstances change.
There you go. And I think that was how I felt like I was raised. That's how I felt like I was, the coaching I saw. You know, and there's a million X's and O's, and I always wanted to be the best X and O person you could find. You know, I wanted to be the cutting edge, the latest, the greatest, yes, but more importantly was how hard my guys played. And I wanted you to come watch my teams and say, man, I have never seen anybody play that hard.
Yeah.
You know, I told the guys, you know, first day at Alabama, I mean at UAB, I was talking about, hey, there's a team down the road who's really good, but they don't have to play harder than us. You know, and it was like, oh, wait a second. Nobody owns the key of that. And what is the best reflection of a coach is when they say, man, that team plays so hard for that coach. You know what that means? They believe.
Right.
They trust. I mean, we can put all these words in there, and that's when it gets exciting. You know, that's when you get chills going down your spine when you go, man, look how they play for each other. And that's what good coaching looks like. That's what great coaching looks like when you get these guys, girls, whatever, play for each other, play for something bigger than themselves, play for their teammates, play for their coaches. And I used to say, man, you know, I'm going to love you.
Yeah.
And of course, as my son who played for me, you say, Dad, I wish you wouldn't love me quite so much, you know, because there was accountability that went with that. We're not doing this.
Yeah.
I care enough about you to want to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Oh, and who you're doing it with, because I really care about you.
My high school coach, who you know, he's a Hall of Fame coach from this state, and playing and being best friends with his son, and we were on the team together, and I would go over there on the weekends. But I can promise you, he did not address him as dad. It was never son when they were there in the building when we were on the field. It was coach.
That's
it
right.
was coach first and foremost, and he would be harder on his own kids than he would the rest of the team.
Yep.
He was hard on all of us,
Sure.
but he did it in the right way.
That's right.
And he made me want to run through a brick wall for him.
That's it.
And the best thing I could ever get is when, whether it's a defensive end playing my position and doing the things that I've been taught to do, and coming over the sideline and seeing a I looked at as a father figure saying, well done.
That's it.
You know?
That's it.
That was my drug for me.
Amen.
And then I hear it on the flip side from my mom and other coaches that have been in the profession that say, why did you do it for so long? Why did you do it at so many different levels? Said there was that aha moment when you saw a kid, you knew where he came from, you knew some of those inherent struggles that he had. The light bulb goes off that day.
See, that's what Coach Safely is.
Yeah.
Coach Safely is coaching. And that's why I say, when I say these things, and, you know, should we get tears in our eyes?
Yeah.
Because it's family. It's what made me who I am. And I said, that's what we're trying to get, not how many home runs you hit, yet that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, there's success, and we want the success. I think we all have to go, what does success look like? So let's figure that out. And this kid is out there, they're playing hard, they're listening to their coach. Now, there's other parts of success, and, you know, especially when you go and that's your job, you know. So as I always said, I need to win so I'm not an idiot and I keep eating. But that allowed me to do all these other things, which is what's cool.
I'm going to try to segue before I start crying and start tearing up with some of this really great stuff that you're laying on us. But internal drive, some of that has to come from the individual,
Amen.
right? You can't coach everything.
No.
There's got to be some effort.
Yep.
And when I talk about driving, we got to think about Donahue.
Yeah, you know, and I go back to just you know, and I know we've had Donahue all year, and they also did 3-man front, but just appreciate those guys. One, we got a great product. They got all kind of cars, but obviously the Chevrolet that we drive, but good folks that are going to give you a really good deal at Donahue Chevrolet.
This discussion with you, and even just doing it here in the few minutes that we've had the talk, learning so much, and then just seeing the passion that you have, and that, you know, it's obvious why you had so much success and how important it is to you. But with every winning team, you've got to have different elements that make up that team. And we hear the term all the time, Coach. you gotta have a few dogs.
A few dogs, a few dogs, just like Canine Solutions.
That's right.
You know, we got dogs there that are keeping us safe, smelling for bombs and guns and all that. And we appreciate those guys, veteran owned right here in Alabama.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful animals. And we appreciate our friends at Buffalo Rock and Dr. Pepper for making this thing possible.
That's right. And they probably drink Dr. Pepper. We appreciate
Dr. Pepper and other great products.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. We appreciate you. That's going to do it for the Coach Bill Clark Show. From Ollie Robinson, the Coach Bill Clark, Pat Smith, wherever he may be, I'm Landrum Roberts. Thanks for joining us.
This has been the Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper.